All right, today we're diving into a case that is just wild. It baffled investigators for more than 20 years. We're talking about the truly bizarre disappearance of Zebb Quinn.
So picture this. It's January 2nd, 2000. An 18-year-old kid named Zebb Quinn finishes his shift at Walmart in Asheville, North Carolina, and then he just vanishes. Poof. Now, what followed was a mystery that took a whopping 22 years to get legal closure. But even with the case closed, you're left asking, what really happened to Zebb Quinn?
Usually in a case like this, the first big break comes from a witness, maybe a confession. Not here. Instead, 4 days after Zebb disappears, his car turns up. And the scene? It was one of the strangest things you could possibly imagine.
So police find Zebb's car, a Mazda Protege, just sitting in a restaurant parking lot. First clue something's off, the headlights are still on. Then, on the back window, someone drew a pair of lips and an exclamation mark in lipstick. But it gets weirder. Inside the car, they find a live puppy. Yeah, a puppy, plus an untraceable hotel key card and a jacket that wasn't even Zebb's. It honestly felt less like a crime scene and more like some kind of surreal, bizarre prank.
Okay, so to even begin to make sense of all this, the puppy, the lipstick, we've got to rewind. Let's go back to the night Zebb disappeared and walk through the timeline of his last known moments. All right, so Zebb clocks out of his Walmart shift at 9 p.m. He's supposed to go check out a car with his coworker, a guy named Robert Jason Owens. And sure enough, just 15 minutes later, they're spotted on surveillance footage at a gas station. But here's where the story gets really weird, at least according to Owens. He says Zebb suddenly gets a page, becomes totally frantic, and just speeds away so fast that he actually rear-ends Owens' truck. And then, later that same night, Owens himself ends up in the hospital with fractured ribs and a head injury. His excuse? A second, completely separate car accident. So you can already see a huge gap between Owens' story and his actions, right? The story's strange enough on its own. But then, get this. 2 days later, someone calls Zebb's job at Walmart to say he's sick and won't be in. Police trace that call, and it comes from the factory where Robert Owens worked. When they confronted him, Owens admitted he made the call, saying Zebb asked him to. Yeah, right. Unsurprisingly, he immediately became the #1 person of interest.
But here's the thing. Robert Owens wasn't the only person on the investigators' radar. As they started digging, they found this whole tangled web of relationships around Zebb. And honestly, it just made everything that much more confusing.
Okay, so for example, Zebb had a crush on a woman named Misty Taylor. Well, her boyfriend, Wesley Smith, was not happy about it and had apparently threatened Zebb. And remember that strange scene with Zebb's car? A police sketch of the person seen driving it kind of looked like Misty. And then there's that mysterious page, the one that supposedly made Zebb so frantic. Cops traced it, and it came from the home of his own aunt, Ina Ustich. What is going on here? And the story just keeps getting more and more tangled. Zebb's aunt says, nope, wasn't me, I didn't make that page. She tells the police her house was actually broken into that night. And guess who she was having dinner with while her house was supposedly being broken into? You guessed it, Misty Taylor and her angry boyfriend, Wesley Smith. I mean, the connections are all there. They're so tantalizing for investigators, but there's no smoking gun, no direct link to Owens. And just like that, the case went cold. And that was it. For 15 long years, there was just nothing, no answers. Zebb's family was left waiting. All those bizarre clues, the puppy, the lipstick, they led nowhere. The case file just sat there, gathering dust. And then in 2015, everything, and I mean everything, changed. Just think about that. 15 years. That's practically a whole lifetime for a teenager. And for all that time, Robert Owens, the last person to see Zebb alive, was just walking around as a free man. But his name was about to come roaring back into the headlines for a completely different and absolutely horrifying reason. In March of 2015, Robert Jason Owens gets arrested. And it's for the brutal murders of Christy Shawn, who was actually a contestant on the Food Network, and her husband, J.T. Codd. Owens eventually pleads guilty, admitting he not only killed the couple, but also dismembered their bodies. All of a sudden, the prime suspect in Zebb Quinn's disappearance is a convicted double murderer. Naturally, the investigation into the Codd murders leads police to search Owens' property, and what they find there is just chilling. They dig under a layer of concrete and find these fragments of fabric, leather, and other unknown hard materials. Right near there, they also find bags of pulverized lime, which, if you don't know, is something used to make bodies decompose faster. Just like that, the Zebb Quinn case was officially back on. So, Owens is already looking at a life sentence for the other murders. In 2017, prosecutors finally indict him for Zebb Quinn's murder too. It takes another 5 years, but they eventually reach a plea deal. A deal that would finally put this case to rest. Well, legally at least. But the story Owens decided to tell? Oh, it was anything but simple. And this is a really important point. Owens did not plead guilty to murder. He pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact. Now, what that means is he admitted to helping the real killer cover up the crime, but he's sticking to his story that he wasn't the one who actually pulled the trigger.
So, what's his story? Well, according to Owens, it all goes back to that jealous boyfriend, Wesley Smith. He claims Smith hired Owens's own uncle, a guy named Gene, to kill Zebb. The story goes that Uncle Gene lured both Robert Owens and Zebb out to a national forest, and that's where Gene shot Zebb. Robert then claims he was forced to help his uncle dismember and burn the body. It's quite a story, and a very convenient one, isn't it? Especially since his uncle, the man he's pinning the murder on, had passed away back in 2017.
So you can see the dilemma this created for law enforcement, right? The prosecutors were openly skeptical. They didn't really buy Owens' story. But think about it. After 22 years, they still had no body and very little physical evidence to go on. Try and get a murder conviction in a trial, that would have been incredibly difficult. So they accepted the plea deal.
And from a practical point of view, the outcome for Robert Owens doesn't really change. He's already serving what's basically a life sentence for the Codd murders. The sentence he got for his part in Zebb's death is served concurrently, which just means it runs at the same time. It doesn't add any extra time to his sentence. The bottom line is he's going to die in prison, one way or another. So the plea deal means that legally the case is closed. It officially says Zebb Quinn was murdered, and that at least brings some form of closure to his family after so long. But it leaves all of us with this big lingering question. You have a story that conveniently blames a dead man, told by a convicted dismembering killer, a story that even the prosecutors didn't really believe. So can we really say we know what happened on that January night? The case file might be closed, but for a lot of people, this mystery feels far from over.